the smell of grass and leather. There were days when we'd play too. We'd cross the lines when the sun would shine and make our dreams come true. I had a glove on my hand and a girl in the stands. She stole my heart like a hit and run. It seems the world was so much simpler back then. We was just out there for fun. I pray for someone to hold your hand, and baseball in the summer, someone to walk with you when this world grows cold. Baseball in the summer, baseball in the summer.
Welcome to the BrockvMac Legendary Rivals podcast, and we are graced by the presence of, what Chris Peters likes to refer to as Roger Dorn for some reason, but Darrell Doc Kemp. And for those of you who got to be coached by Coach Kemp, was a hitting coach at Brock, but probably just as, if not more famous for his incredible playing career, and is continuing to coach to this day in Niagara. Darrell Kemp, Coach Kemp, how are you doing?
Good, Michael. Thank you for having me on. Yeah, I'm doing well. It's been rough, but I'm doing good. Tired a lot.
Well, it's good to catch up with you after 30 years, and we'll be able to get into a little bit of the fact that you're wearing a Brock dad pullover there, because you've had a daughter that went, and you've got a son that's pitching for the team currently. Yes. Did you ever think that you would be seeing both kids go through that university when you were first signing up to be the hitting coach? I don't know about that, eh?
Yeah, I know. That's funny because, my sister went there. My nephew went there. My other nephew went there. So there is some history there. But with my kids, my daughter, she graduated there. And my son, they reached out to him. Fab Del Rio's the pitching coach there, reached out to Jack a year ago and showed some interest in him. And he loves it. He's just having a ball. Actually, just got back to practice, so 10 minutes ago.
Well, with the amount of tuition that the Kemp family have put into Brock, they should name a building after you at this point.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, nice. They should build a ball field is what they should do. That would be nice.
Yeah, tell me about it. I didn't really like trucking all the way down to Thorold for practice, or, George Taylor Park or Community Park is nice, but it'd be great on campus. It's perfect for it, right? They've got all the space in the world.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I just think you can use it all year round, get it out to the public, to the city, and get other teams in there. It'd be wonderful. It's a good recruiting tool, too.
Yeah, for sure. So Darrell, I think maybe we'll start with, I think some of the Brock guys will be familiar with your skills and qualities as a coach, but why don't we start with, where did you start? When did you start playing baseball and develop a love for the game? Did it start early for you?
Well, it was just like everybody else in Niagara Falls. You played your summer league, right? You played growing up with your friends. You played house league. You made the travel. So that's where I started. But I really didn't take it all that serious until when I went away to college. So after grade 12, I went to LA with a buddy of mine. My brother, actually, he's the one who pushed me to get me involved with it, to go to California. And so when you go to a place like that, and you're playing on a field 6 days a week, you play a 40-game fall schedule, a 40-game spring schedule, you're going to learn the game. You're going to learn a lot that you haven't learned before. So that was really after my first year of playing in LA. It took off for me as far as baseball goes. And I kept at it. So it was one of those things that I wanted to make sure I did it I could do it every day as best I could. So you learn a lot, and that's where I got excited for the game of baseball. It's funny. I remember telling my dad in high school, you play your summer ball, and he'd come to the park and, he'd complain. He's one of the parents that would start complaining, why is that guy doing this? Why are you playing? Why is this? And I would never say anything. But after a year playing college ball in the States and coming back, and then he'd do the same thing, and I'd say, well, this is why we do this, and this is why I'm doing this. And it's funny, but that was where the love came in, is playing every day of the sport. That was it. So it just took off from there as far as college goes.
What position did you start playing, Darrell? I think people would be interested to know what your early positions were.
Yeah, that's a good story, because I was always the ninth kid. I was the right field, right? It was one of those kids, the last kid picked. I remember back. See, now a little things start to come back to me. I remember back in Pee Wee at Oaks Park, the diamond used to be where the track is. And I remember I hit a ball, and I hit it off the pavilion there. But I only got a triple. So all the guys started nicknaming me Ironside because I couldn't run. So I was one of the worst friggin' guy. I was like the last guy picked when you play right field. I remember in house league baseball at Hope Park, I came into pitch and I walked 21 guys in a row. And so I never pitched again after that. So I remember also, I think it was Bantam. They used to have those camps that come around, the Expos and the Jays. They'd run a camp at Oaks Park. And I remember as kids, we'd go to the camp. So I think we were 15 years old at the time, 16. So I was pretty good at road hockey as a goalie. So I went down to first base and just tried out that way. And our travel coach was watching the camp, and he says, I didn't know you like first base, because I was picking the ball out of the dirt, stretching. And he said to me, he says, well, you're going to play first base. And that's where I started playing first base. It was midget. So from that point on, I stayed at first base until I got to pro ball in 1984, where I was switched to the outfield. So it was different.
Did you enjoy first base more than you did the outfield, or obviously it's a different experience, just in terms of a whole bunch of different things. Never mind the amount of movement you had at first compared to the outfield.
Well, with first, you're in the game, right? You're controlling a few things you can control. Pickoffs first if you want. There's a lot of things you can do at first. Outfield, you're the last line of defense, so you better keep the ball in front of you, right? I remember as a first baseman, I would always make sure my pitcher was comfortable, right? If I seen something I didn't like, I would call time, run out. I'd be there maybe 10 seconds, tell him something, and run away from him, just to give him a break, a breather. So I always enjoyed that part of being at first base. And, and if you're good at picking the baseball, then you give your shortstop, third baseman's confident throwing the baseball too. So, I mean, that it was, and you're closer to the dugout half the time. So, so you're quicker in, quicker out type of thing. So getting ready to hit. But I enjoyed playing first. And then when I got to the outfield, the only good thing about it was, I remember a coach telling me at spring training, he says, just stand 10 feet from the fence. If the ball goes over your head, it's a home run. If it's in front of you, sprint, pick it up, and throw it through your cutoff. That's all I want you to do. So that got to be easy. So, anywhere I could play, I would play. I wouldn't care less. It's just being in between the lines for the 3 hours you're there.
Yeah. So, what did you enjoy your time in California, and how did your college experience translate to eventually becoming a pro?
It was different. My first year at college, I didn't play. I played in the fall season. What they would do is they have a 40-game schedule in the fall back then. So you'd play USC, UCLA, San Diego State. You'd play the big-time schools. And then in the spring, you'd play your conference. And I didn't play in the spring. I think I pinch hit 7 times. Because the coach told me then, he says, he was afraid to put me in at first base because I'd throw the ball into the left center if there was a first and third situation. So I had to learn how to throw properly. So it was like a learning year for me in my first year of college. And then my second year, he said to me, he says, if you're going to come back, you're going to have a tough time making a team. So I did go back anyways. I don't want to start over. And I ended up leading the team in hitting, had a state record for a month of hitting or something like that. I can't remember, but it was a great year for me. It was one of my best years, my second year. And I got to play on a scout league team out there. It's just guys that get together and they go play. It was down by the Rose Bowl, so you would have other teams come in on a Wednesday and Sunday and just play some games. And so you get recognized, you get looked at. So I had a coach from Cal State LA, which is Jack Deutsch. He liked me. He wanted me to go there after my 2 years at Glendale. And then I had a coach from San Francisco State, and there was one from San Diego State. So there were some offers that came in after my 2 years at Glendale. The problem was the cost to go to those schools was so expensive, and the U.S. dollar back then was really high. So I remember Niagara University came along, and they said, we'll give you this, and I could live at home and go to school. So I ended up with a 3-quarter scholarship, living at home, and driving across the border every day to go to school in Niagara, which was great. The baseball took me to places that I would never have thought of doing right out of high school. Met a lot of good people down in L.A. And Rene Gonzalez was a guy I played with a lot. He's run some camps out there still. My buddy from Niagara Falls, Earl Carlson, he's retired now, but he was a pitcher down there with me at the time. The whole idea of, it's like the old adage, it's funny. When I was down at Glendale, and you're in Southern California, so you're playing baseball 6 days a week, right? The weather's great, and it's for them out there, it's their routine. It's like them coming here to try and play hockey. It's crazy, right? Our routine is hockey down here. So I remember one time I played some ball hockey in California with a catcher on the team. I took a slap shot. He thought I was Wayne Gretzky, for God's sake. It was hilarious. And that was awful at hockey. So, but it was something different. I got a cute story about Jack Deutsch. He was the coach at Cal State LA, and he was with the Angels. He's the one who actually got me the contract with the Angels. He's known for College World Series. Phantom defense wins College World Series. He's the guy who did it in 1978 or 75. They were playing a College World Series game against the team, and what he did was he went out and took the infield before the game with no baseball, faked everything. You hit a ball at third, hit a ball at second, double play ball, and then you pop the ball up to the catcher, he hits his glove, and they run off the field. Well, he did that with no baseball. And the headlines was College World Series, Phantom defense wins College World Series. And it was one of those things where you played into the other team's mind. And it was just amazing how that went. And I always said, guys like that just read the game different. So I learned a lot from him. And he was the one that, fortunately, gave me an opportunity to go down to Pro Bowl. So, but after Niagara, that was it. It was when I went to Arizona for spring training, and then went to Peoria for 1 year in Single A. And Joe Madden was my coach there, and learned a lot, systematically how to do things and that type of event. You're playing every day still, but you're not going to school.
Yeah, that must have been interesting because Joe Madden is seen as kind of a modern day guru a little bit with these unique ways of creating a culture. Was it hard being a Canadian in that mix, or did they see you as just another player?
No, you know what? That never came into it. I was in Peoria. Actually, I was supposed to go to Salem, Oregon. And what happened was they got rid of the first baseman in Peoria because they had some issues with him after 2 weeks. So I went to Peoria right away. And you know what? Pete Vanaka, he owned the team. He was best friends with the guy that did the songs for the Cubs. He passed away. I forget his name. Take me out to the ball game. Remember, he's singing the seventh inning. He's stretched on his
Harry Carey?
Peoria. So him and Pete Vanaka were best friends. So he would invite him over to some games to Peoria, and it was funny. Great guy. But as a Canadian, no, that never came into it. I remember my roommate. He was Mickey Sasser, 6'8" guy, who bought a $200 station wagon just so we can get around town. And it blew. I think my brother bought it for us, and it blew up after about 3 weeks. So, but because you're on your own, right? You just you're going to the ballpark, make sure you're there at this time. You got to play. I mean, I did break the scoreboard twice in batting practice. So I played great for about a month and a half, and then I went into a slump. And it's the only time I've ever been thrown out of a baseball game was in Peoria. I was taking my batting gloves off in the dugout, and I just looked at a kid, one of the players, I said, "That's crap," or whatever. And the umpire at first base throws me out. And I couldn't believe it. Well, Madden went freaking psycho. I thought he was going to kill him. He comes running out screaming and yelling. So we both got tossed from the game. It's the only time I've ever been thrown out. So that means me being Canadian and the American didn't like me. That could be it. I have no idea. But other than that, so it was I never had anything to do with it. It's funny. You get that, you play your college ball, you get yourself prepped, you get an opportunity to play pro ball. You get there, and when they release you, it's like, God, I still want to play every day, right? You lose something. And I remember going into the coach's office. Dad called me and said there was 2 weeks left in the season, and they were almost in first place. And they released me to sign a kid that was playing in the Alaska League. And so I had to go home. And Madden said, he says, if something comes up, I'll let you know. Well, still doesn't have my number, so I never heard back from him.
Yeah, Darrell, I remember you telling me that they, one of the things that they try to get you to change your hitting style a little bit. I remember you saying about, I think they wanted you to go to go with the pitch a little bit more and be less of a pull hitter. You feel that was maybe a bad read in retrospect, and now that we've kind of got better reads on how people hit and natural swings and that kind of thing, you think it was maybe a little bit of thinking that was a little outdated, or was that frustrating to you that they tried to change your swing a bit?
You know what? I believe my biggest problem was I was hard-headed. I wouldn't lift weights. I wouldn't do those things because I thought that would affect my swing. So I always made sure that with hitting, whatever I learned back in college, I stuck with. The lower half was the biggest thing with being comfortable and calm and doing the mental part of baseball. That was probably my biggest problem. I wasn't the best athlete, but I would think differently than a lot of guys. And with hitting, I always preached, balance is important, and showing the pitcher you can hit anywhere, right? You got to be able to show a pitcher, tell the pitcher or catcher you can hit the left field if you're a left-handed hitter, so you're not just simply trying to pull. But with Rick Downs was our hitting guy at the time. He was the roving hitting guy for the Angels. He was always suggest hands are more important inside. Hands are more important inside, so you can flare the ball to left field like a Rod Carew type thing, right? But you know what? With me, if I would have stuck to a weight program, working out like all the kids do today, it's so different. Maybe I'd have a better opportunity, but I didn't do it. So.
Well, this is, I think hindsight is always 20/20, Darrell. We don't. I think there's other things that I think are more natural to players from that era. They more students of instinctual things and the psychology of the game. It's one of the things that I have some difficulty with is with analytics being so prevalent in the game now. They pull pitchers at a manufactured pitch count, and they don't account for the fact that sometimes when a pitcher's really on and they're dominating a lineup, they're in the head of the people that are in the, that are hitting. And the minute you bring in, it doesn't matter if you bring in a guy that throws 100 miles an hour. The fact that the pitcher that's been dominating all game is gone, everyone's like, I can relax now, and I'm going to take some hacks because, that guy's out of the game. And not every development is always great. I think, by and large, it's, they're done from a point of science, but sometimes people underestimate the psychology or the morale or the confidence that is needed to be a good baseball player. So it's interesting to hear that.
Well, a pitcher, like as a scout, in Toronto, we look at pitchers, right? I don't care what you do in the first inning. I don't care what you do in April. What are you doing in August? What are you doing in the seventh inning? That tells me you're getting better and better and better. How can you improve yourself if you're getting pulled after 3 pitches or after 2 hitters? That makes no sense. Plus, if you're a kid, let's say you're in the 4th inning and you are dotting strikes and you are pitching the 4 quadrants of the strike zone and you are ahead and you're not fading and your breaking balls work and you're not walking back, why would you consider taking him? I mean, he's got to learn what to do in the 5th inning. He's got to learn what to do in the 7th inning if it gets ahead or behind it. How's he ever going to learn that, right? Now, if analytics is going to be the whole thing, like a robot thing, analytics has its place in the game, and I agree with that. But mentally, these kids need to learn too. Like today's kids, you got to learn to pitch inside. Just somebody is afraid to throw inside, they're going to hurt somebody. And all these kids that wear armor. Well, I mean, the kid throwing 88 today or 89 was throwing 88 or 89 30 years ago. We didn't have all that stuff on, and I got hit in the middle of the back 10 times playing with the inter-county team. So it drives me nuts when it seems like it's not. It seems to me the kids today, the analytic parts are taking over too much. You're not allowing the kid to think for themselves too,
There's a feel to it too. I the part that always used to make me laugh, or because I was a pitcher, was the idea of eliminating base stealing there for a while. Mm-hmm. Well, one of the most annoying things that takes away from your focus as a pitcher is when you've got a guy on first that's flapping around because they're going to go steal second, and you're having to focus on keeping them close and speeding up your delivery. And 100% of the time, pitchers are less effective with people on base than they are when people are not on base. And the thing is, you get distracted and you would make lots of bad pitches as a result of some guy over there at first driving you crazy because they're threatening to steal. And people don't quantify that. There's not an analysis that says, what is the difference in someone's mindset if there's a person just stapled to the first base bag that you don't have to worry about, or one who's trying to distract you and in your field of vision. It's just human nature, but they don't account for that a lot of the time. And it's a little bit. I wish they would talk to pitchers about this because there was this. There's this.
Listen, I agree with you. You got to talk to pitchers. Remember, pitchers only pitch once every 4 days. Yeah,
and they observe for the rest, or goof off, whatever we do between starts. But you have that. We understand what compromises us to a hitter.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting. So, Darrell, through your pro ball experience, I know that you had a pretty good relationship with Devon White. Did you play long enough to develop some friendships that have lasted beyond the time that you were on the field together?
Well, Devon White, he was at spring training. He was with us, and then he went to Double-A at that time. Wally Joyner, he was Topps Bubblegum Baseball Player of the year before. He went to Double-A, and so that's when they had 12 first basemen trying out for their minor league teams there. And I remember Moose Stubbe looked at us and said to us, look, we got 12 of you guys trying out. Somebody going to get cut. Does anybody play the outfield? And I put up my hand and said, sure, I can. That's what he said. Just stand by the fence and catch the ball. So I did that. But one of the guys that was on the team with me is Bert Adams. He was from Houston. I played with him. He turned down a full ride for a defensive back at Texas A&M to play pro ball with the Angels. He played 4 years, I believe, or 5 years. Great guy, an outfielder, utility guy, could hit. Learned a lot from him. But a lot of the guys never really kept in touch with after that. It was more, you're done, you move on. And that's what happened with that. But guys in college, I kept in touch with guys from Niagara University, guys from Glendale, a couple guys from there. So, like Rene, he was playing pro ball with the Jays, with the Angels. And I just remember with Rene, he was, when he signed his big contract with the Angels, he had a house in Hollywood Hills. So my buddy Earl and his wife and my wife, we went out there for a Super Bowl weekend. And, he gets everything free because he's in pro ball, T-shirts, shoes, and all that. So Earl and I, we're drinking. He just started going in his closet and said, here, let's take this. We'll take that. This is mine. I want this. He's getting it free. He's not giving it up. So guess what? We're taking it. So little things like that. I got a bat from him. I got a bat from Andre Dawson, which I really like because he was one of my favorite players was Dawson. I always respected a guy that said, you know what, here, Chicago, just sign me. I don't care what the money is, and wins the MVP. He's a different type of player, different type of person with the Expos to the game. So I always liked that. But other than that, I met, Alfredo Griffin, great guy. Roomed with him for a couple of weekends when I was scouting with Toronto. What they would do is later on, they would send you to the Stompers when they had the Stompers here in St. Catharines. So I would go with the team for a month at the end. And we went to Erie Community to play a couple games. And J.J. Cannon was the coach. Alfredo Griffin was the rolling infielder guy. Elwood Meyer was the pitching coach. So I was just the guy that would throw batting practice and coach first base at the time. So it was fun doing that. You get to see the guys that drafted. And Alfredo Griffin, I got to learn a lot from him. Just talk to him about, infield, about preparation, about, mental attitude. And, that stuff those guys learn and they try to pass on to the young generation. It's amazing. So, but so guys like that, I was fortunate enough to get a chance to talk to and deal with. And Dick Field. He was another one. I went to Mark Lino was the worked with the Jays, and he invited me to go to Europe with him to do some baseball clinics. And Dick Schofield came along the first year or the second year, and Rick Cassetti came along the first year. He was an outfielder with the Jays. And we did some baseball clinics in Italy and Austria. And just, great being around because you just learn the little nuances that they had all their life. And when you pick those things up, you remember them and you try to bring them back and teach them to the kids you're dealing with here in local summer leagues. So that was good. Those were good old memories that I enjoyed.
Yeah, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Mark Lino was the head of community relations when we put the first Canadian games in the Skydome at the time. We put a doubleheader with Brock, and in the second game we had McMaster playing U of T, and I think it was, maybe Brock and Durham College that played. But interesting. Mark was just a sweetheart of a guy and a real advocate for the game in Canada. How did you end up getting into scouting, and were you involved with Bill Bykowski? Was he the guy that you connected with initially, or how did you end up as a scout, Darrell?
No, what happened was once I got released with the Angels, as soon as I got home from Illinois, I got a hold of Bob Prentice. He was the head of scouting for the Jays, right? So He was in a hotel room in Quebec when I called him. And I basically said, Bob, here's what happened. Can you help me? And he said, don't call us, we'll call you. And that was basically it. I said, okay. So then I can't remember when, but he invited me out to be an associate scout, which is a guy that's in an area, right? And So I would go. I think it lasted 9 years. I can't remember how long it was, but it was all from basically the end of April till October. I was at the park somewhere in Ontario or Western New York. I'd go see some guys, but I was coaching at Niagara University at the time too. So doing that and scouting was all baseball, like mostly all year round. The problem is I get paid anything, so it sucked that way, but it was great to have like, yeah, sure, you want to do this, I'd love to. We're not giving you anything. Okay, thanks. But I was doing that for a long time, and I remember being invited. I remember Gillick. I had an interview with Gillick and some other board guys at the Dome. It was myself, Farkowski, and Ridley, because Bobby Prentice was on his way out, and they wanted to find a new director for head of scouting. And they ended up giving it to Farkowski, which was great because Billy came to the table and said, okay, guys, we're going to pay you X amount of dollars a month, and we're going to give you, here's a jacket, here's a briefcase. If you want to come to a game, it's free. We're going to invite you to a meeting here, we're going to have a buffet and all that stuff. Like, that stuff didn't happen before. Because I remember the guy who was scouting in the area, a good friend of mine, who was the other scout for a while. And he said, Prentice would never give you anything. I said, it was a waste of time. So that's why you guys didn't have any incentive to do anything. So, but with Billy, he was great. He was wonderful. And I think he's still with the Reds, or I think he's done after this year. I'm not sure, but he's had a fabulous career. But yeah, so I mean, doing the scouting and coaching at Niagara at the same time, like there's, you got the D1 school there, you've got some good kids there to look at. I remember taking a few of those kids to the Dome for a workout, so it was good. But the scouting was fun. It was different. I mean, I had the free tickets to go to the World Series, so I had 2 free seats sitting up 10 rows on the third baseline. I think I left the game early. I shouldn't have. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I was going to a Stag and Dole in the West to a good friend who's a DA over there. And I walked in and I said, you idiots owe me something because I just left the World Series for your stay. It's stupid. But that's what happened. Weird.
Yep. Tell me about Niagara and Jim Morrow. Because, I think at that time, Jim was the head coach. And when I first met you, you were the hitting instructor there working with Jim. And we all played on the same ridiculous summer baseball team with Bill Newton and a few others. And Bill remembered that the coach's name was Bill Defoe. And I hadn't remembered Bill's. I remember his first name. I didn't remember his last name. But how did you get hooked up with Niagara? Obviously, you'd been there, but what was it like coaching, and what was your relationship like with Jim?
Oh, that was great. Jimmy, I met Jimmy. He went to St. Bonaventure, and so he was the SID at Niagara at the time when he was coaching there, as you say. But I met him at drinking at the bars over there. So talking baseball. And, he became, he said to me, do you want to come coach? And I said, sure. So it got to the point where he couldn't pay me because I was Canadian and didn't have a working visa there. I was working in Canada. So what he would do is any fundraisers that they would do, if there was any little bit of money, that would help cover some bridge fare. And that was basically it. But I wanted to do it because I still love the game, being in the game, being involved in D1 school and recruiting. I recruited Ryan Diodati to come there. And as you may know, Jeff Hoover after not being there. But anyways, the coaching part was, I think it was there 10 years with him. I was doing third base and hitting and working with kids. And, I remember I was really dumb sometimes with the rules because I didn't know it all. But there was one kid from St. John Fisher we had, big first baseman, loved the kid. The epitome of what you want in a college player. Great student athlete, dedicated in between the lines for 2 hours, doesn't doesn't care who's in the stands, wants to play hard. And he came to us and said, I want to quit. I said, I couldn't believe this. Like, it just shocked me. So I took him to lunch, and I bought him a sandwich and a pop, right? And talked him into staying. So he stayed. And I didn't realize he was going to school free because his dad was a VP or something with a school in St. John Fisher. So he was school free there. I thought, at Niagara, and I thought, that's pretty cool. But anyways, about 10 years later, Marl says to me, did you buy somebody lunch? And I said, yeah. I said, you're not supposed to do that. It's an NCAA violation. I said, so he said, you want the kid to starve? That makes no sense, right? He says, well, he's by his own. I said, God, I never. See, that's the point. I didn't know all that stuff, right? I was just baseball.
Yeah.
But anyways, Niagara was different in a sense. I mean, Jimmy, the fundraising you had to do to play, like, you know where the field is. It's a turf field now. Well, way back then, it wasn't that good. It was awful. So you tried to get games to South Magny because it was a lot better field. But I mean, we'd fundraised. Frank Layden, who was the president of the Utah Jazz, he was part of Niagara University alum and all that. He would donate a few things to baseball because he liked Jimmy. So we'd get a batting tunnel, we'd get a machine and all that. And he donated when he was with the Utah Jazz. So stuff like that happened. But it was, you know what? I mean, we'd go down south for the spring trips and play some games down there. And but it was, when you played up north, it was cold. And that was the frustrating part of it, playing in the spring like that. It's too bad they couldn't have their season start in August and finish in November. They do in the Canadian.
Yeah, it's just holds back the Northeast.
Yeah. No, I get it.
Yeah, and so I don't know whether you'll remember this, but Mike McRae suggested we talk to you about the Brock program, and I think it was easy in that Ted and I were playing in Niagara Falls anyway, and it must have. At that time, there were only 4 teams in Canada. There was the National Baseball Institute, which was kind of its own thing, but there was Durham College, there was McMaster, McGill, and I, for the love of me, can't remember the 4th team, but I think it may have been Guelph. And, so we're going to launch a team in St. Catharines at Brock. And did Coach McRae talk to you about it? Or I don't remember whether he did or whether we did at his suggestion talk to you first. I don't remember how that happened.
Well, Mike approached me, and then I just remember sitting down with you, Ted, and Mike, and then saying, this is the direction you guys want to go. And I said, hey, you want me to help? I'll help. I mean, I was not getting tired of Niagara, but it was just frustrating because it wasn't helping me as far as my business goes, right? The work. Like, all my work was really in Canada. So I was trying to find a way to ease out of that from Niagara, but to still stay in baseball. And Brock was an opportunity that, made sense to me. Like, it's a short season. So I said to Mike, sure, I give you a hand. I don't mind doing it. So, yeah. And it was fun. I remember I think the first year, you know what? I think we had a 30-game schedule. And I thought this was wonderful. So you played Niagara University, you played Canisius, you played Bonaventure. Like, you actually set up games with them, played in Peoria community. And then, you went and played the other teams in Ontario. And you had a 30-game schedule. So and what I liked about it, and you got to remember, a lot of those kids, like even yourself or like a Jeff Hoover or an Andrew Tinnish, these guys are playing summer baseball at home. They finished second week in August, bang, they're playing fall baseball. So they're playing another 30 games. They already played probably 30, 40 games there. So they're playing 70 games within half a year, which is, that's what all you want to do as a player. I don't care who you are. You play it all the time, every day, you get better. It's that simple. And I thought Brock was good at that, having that opportunity, another venue, right?
Yeah, there's a couple things I remember very specifically. I remember you pulling up the very first day of training camp, and you're working in insurance, and we'll talk about, you and your connection with your brother and getting Rob Green started and a few other things. But I remember you pulling up and you were driving a big blue, I think Cadillac at the time, but you just looked, I remember saying to all the players, like, Darrell, the one thing you never had to do is a baseball player always knows another one, right? The way they carry themselves, the kind of way they walk around a diamond, it's one of the things that kind of separates good players from bad is just the optics of how people carry themselves on a field. And, I think everyone was kind of like super jazzed when you kind of came flying out. At that time, I remember you were pretty big into dip, and a lot of the players were too, which is kind of crazy in retrospect. But, and now the infielders in particular, because McRae was a pitcher and we had Tim Topping there as well. Now the position guys who were mostly first year people had someone that they could confide in a little bit, because it was the coaching staff was set up in such a way that we needed a hitting coach and a pitching coach that could absorb a lot, because Coach McRae was setting such a tone just in terms of being disciplined and being committed and all those kinds of things. He was setting a culture and probably didn't have the time to, help Colin Tyler learn how to, square it up a little bit more. But what do you remember about those first training camps and that first training camp in Thorold, and getting a look at the players that were there? Because I know a few of them, you came to me and said, I remember one of your favorites was Darrell Houston, who was an outfield.
I was going to say the Houston guys. I like these kids. They're the epitome of what you want between the lines. The guys are going to come and play. They go hard. They're going to, they're going to run to their position, run off on the third out. Like, they're going to do the things that look good, that won't embarrass you, the team, and all that stuff. But I just remember that. And him playing center field, like, he doesn't give up on a ball. Like, he runs through the wall to catch the ball. It's like that freaking Bugs Bunny cartoon. He just pushes the thing aside to catch it. Like, he was that. And it's funny when you don't get a chance to see all these kids. So they come from a different part of Ontario. So like Oshawa area and all that stuff. Like, you don't get to see them. And when they do come to the camp, it's great that they want to play the game and they want to be there. That's what you want. Like a Jess Dixon. When I remember, I saw Jess in the fall, and it's funny. He looks the same as he does then as he did, 58 years ago. He doesn't change.
No.
But he's the typical kid I want on a team, because he's the guy that gets on the bench and talks it up. He's the guy that gets on the field, talks it up. He's the guy that hustles. Third out's made, he's beating everybody off the field. When he takes the field, he's beating everybody on the field. And he's doing it for the whole 7 innings. He's not doing it for the first inning. He's doing it for the whole 7, right? That's the difference. Those kids, and we drain that in. Mike did that. I did that. Because Mike and I learned that in States. That's what they did down there. If you didn't do it, you didn't play. It was very simple. If you didn't want to run to your position, thank you. You can sit. This guy will run that. I don't care if he hits 5 more home runs. We're not looking at that. We're looking at guys representing baseball etiquette at its best, like a Jeff Ruble and Andrew Tinnish. Those are guys that I really, because you didn't have to harp on them. They just did it, right? So it's funny. But the amount of kids you guys would have, you'd have 50 kids come to try it. You have to run 3 days.
I still, we've talked about it with the first baseman. There were 6 of them.
Yeah.
And all of whom had started in junior at their respective programs. So it wasn't like there was one of them that was a house league player or someone that was a bench player. They were all starting at top tier junior programs at that point.
Sure.
And, keeping 4 first basemen on the team is for me, it was completely foreign. I had never played on a team that had 4 of them, right. But it was that close at that spot. And having been there from the gym workouts and the rest, where we had 160 kids come out and we cut down to 35, and then we end up at training camp and all of a sudden we're back up to about 50.
Mm-hmm.
I knew who was coming that I had helped recruit in. I knew the Houston boys. I'd played with them in junior. I knew Chris Peters. I'd played with him in junior.
Yeah.
I knew some of the other kids that were coming. But when we got there and all of a sudden we had an outfield of Rick, Darrell, Scott Jusiak, and Andrew Tinish that would win games in warm-up by throwing through in the infield-outfield drill and would just psych the other team out. It was pretty easy as a pitcher. You just went out there and threw strikes. That's all you had to do.
Funny, I ran into Rick Bottom. Where the hell did I see him? Oh, this is probably 7 years ago, 6 years. I was coaching the district team here in the Falls. We have workouts in Niagara Falls. He was an adult. And his kid was playing soccer. And I walked by. I didn't even recognize him. I walked by and said, "Hey, coach," or whatever. And I looked at him and I said, "Okay, Rick." And I said to him, before he said anything, "Okay, let's go. You come down here and work with some of these kids right now. You got to give back. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear any crap. Just give back, work with some of the kids." And he says, "I can't. I got to watch my daughter play soccer." Well, that's exciting. Here, I got some paint I'll try. Come down here and work with some of these kids. Because guys like that, you want out there teaching because they have the proper teaching aspect when it comes to baseball. I love Rick. He was great. Great center fielder, smooth, glide off his feet, smooth, gets to the ball, behind the ball, 2 hands to catch the ball. You don't see any laziness out of that. That's what I like. Same with Tinish. He was 2 hands behind the baseball. That's so important. And it's a teaching moment because I can say to kids when I was coaching my kid, when he was 15, 14, 13, those kids, they do it. You can do it. Jackie Bradley Jr. does it. Harrison Bader does it. Does it all the time. Why do they do it? Why don't you do it? There's no magic to it, right? It's just, it's different. But I remember Rick, and it was, and that guys like that, like a Jeff Hoover. I remember Jeff Hoover after his first year of Brock. Typical crush a baseball, great hands. Once he gets running, he'll hurt you. But his quickness wasn't there yet. So he's more of a third baseman instead of a shortstop. But after his first year, he wanted to go to a Division I school. So I called Marl at Niagara and said, "Do you want to bring Jeff over?" He said, "Sure." So Jeff ended up, I think the record was he had a bunch of home runs in 4 years or something. He was on the top 5 of Niagara's all-time home run guys, I guess. So good for him. He had a great career at Niagara, and now he's prof at Brock, which is wonderful. So he's there. And you look at a kid like Tinish. I remember this. I always remember this. We were playing, I think it was York. We got beat. It was in the finals of an OUA game at Alex McKenzie Park. Because it was Ricky Johnson was coaching the team. And I remember it was just a back and forth. And teams were yelling at each other. The fans were yelling and all this crap. So it was a tough loss. We lost the game in the last inning. And I remember Andrew's dad said to me, "Can you get my kid into the States?" That was after his first year. And I said, "Sure." I don't know if I could. So I called Morrow and said, "Hey, here's a kid, left-handed. You've seen him. We played against you. Left-handed pitcher, great fastball, plus arm, swing the bat, can run, smart, good baseball etiquette. Outfielder who's not going to embarrass you." And he said, "Sure, right, I'll take him." So, and then McRae, he's another one, right? He said, "I want to get to do this full time. So, Marl, can you take him on as a hitting guy? He wants to do it full time." So this is how the transition started. And I thought, that's what it's all about. Is these guys wanting to play and get to the next level, and they did that. So if I could be a little bit of help in the background to help them, I was happy. From that point. But I think if it wasn't for Brock, those 2 guys would have had that opportunity. Now look at Tinish today. He's with the Jays. How long? 23 years? 20, I forget now. So, that's what I see out of it. So I just think it's a great. Alex Noel, look at that kid. Played pro pitcher. So Brock, there is some good things that are coming up, and I just wish they would have. I just wish it would start middle of August and run till the first week of November. Make it a bigger season so there's more eyes on kids. Because again, as a scout, when you watch a kid in April, what is he doing in August and September? That's what you want to see. right? The improvement. And I think this helps.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think a lot of the players will have interesting things to say. What I remember most, because I was a pitcher, so we didn't have a lot of interaction during the season, but you were very efficient in the way that you would suggest things to kids. And, I remember you saying just simple little things that would either make you laugh or really pump your tires a little bit. So during training camp, we had the only thing we had was we had a few kids that were there that weren't invited, but the university had a policy that said that they had to come anyway. And we had this kid who was from St. Catharines who was just a disaster on the field. He would never catch the ball. He would always do this thing where he was an outfielder, I guess. That's what he said he was. But he would start running around in a circle when the ball was hit to him, and then he would jump up in the air and he'd fall down and the ball would land behind him. And you and I were walking in from the bullpen, and you turned to me and said, "Who invited the ballerina to the training camp? And whoever that is should be fired." I said, "It wasn't me, Darrell. Talk to Coach McRae about it." Because, but you always had a great sense of humor. And I remember specifically one thing you did with me is I pitched the second half of a doubleheader against Niagara. Right. And we had gotten our brains beaten in the game before. It was 11-2 or some such thing. But the pitchers had struggled with balls and strikes. And, I pitched, not as well as I could have, but we were close. It was 3-2 or 3-2 when I came out, and they scored a couple runs. We ended up losing the game, I think either 5-3 or, it was not a disgrace like the other game was for sure. But, right. I was pissed at myself because I wanted to finish the game, and Coach McRae came and pulled me out. But he took me aside and said, "Mike, you pitched really good today. Just don't change. Keep doing that. You'll have a great year." And, for a hitting coach to say that, whose job it is not to pump the tires of the pitchers, I remember that very specifically because it was very early in the year, and our pitchers had struggled some. And it kind of pushed me on to the rest of the year where I was kind of able, like our older pitchers, Rob Green and myself, and Chris Ebel, those three in particular, were really able to thrive at Brock because it was one of the few baseball teams I recall being on where the pitchers were leaders. I had been on other teams where pitchers were kind of their own sideshow, which is usually where they are, especially lefties like me. But at Brock, the coaches allowed us to be leaders and leaned on us because we were older. And all the other kids were young. The Houstons were freshmen. Right. Jeff Hoover was a freshman. Our outfield was all freshmen. And had you been on teams before where pitchers were more in a leadership role, or is that unusual too from your perspective?
Well, it's sort of unusual, I guess, when you're the leadership role thing comes with experience. Okay. And I think with the senior aspect, that makes sense. When the young guys come in, they got to look up to somebody because they're nervous as heck. It's their first time. Like my kid last year, he's a freshman. He's looking up to some of the seniors. And I said, "You know what? You have to give yourself some credit. You wouldn't be there if they didn't like you." That's number one. And when it comes to a player, I don't care if you're a pitcher or a third baseman. In my mind, in my view, you know what? You play the game for 7 innings. That's what it's designed for the last 30 years, right? It used to be 9, but now it's 7. So what are you doing between when you're playing defense, when you're playing offense? You know what? What did you do right? What did you do wrong? How do you improve on it? How do you put the bad things aside? And so if you focus on one pitch at a time, and I know that's easy to say and hard to do, but if you do that at the end of the game, how did you do? Now, forget about it. It's over. There's nothing you can do about it. What are we doing tomorrow? That's the next stage. Okay, so let's get to that first inning tomorrow. What do I got to do right? What do I got to do wrong? I got to make sure I hustle, make sure I do this, make sure I pick up my teammates, blah, blah, blah. You cheer them on. do it again. You know what? So if you make an error, get a hit. If you strike out, make a good play. Okay, but have that mindset for the 7 innings. And then after the game's over, what did I do? Because where it sucks, it's the last day and you're not playing for another 6 months. That's when it sucks. So now you're not playing. Okay? You just want to be on the field to play. That's it. So when you're in competition and you get pulled out of a game that you think you should stay in, okay, next guy up, you do it for him. Let's see how you do. He's got to learn that, right? You got to be able to learn to take into that. And so that kid can say, hey, you know what, I did it, or, you know, what do I got to work on for next time if I didn't do it? You know, so maybe my next chance I'm going to be better, or, you know, whatever. But that's me. It's what are you learning at the time, and you're focused on, like, your mind's not in the stands, your mind's between the lines. That's important. It's so easy to say and so hard to teach. You know?
Yeah, it's very interesting to hear that. I think one of the fuller relationships that developed in '95 was Mark LePage, who was a student. I don't think he was going to make the team as a player, so he quickly pivoted into becoming a coach and a guy that kind of helped. But he really gravitated and was like a sponge around you. Do you remember what Mark was like? And you know, a lot of that. I used to call him your mini-me, kind of in retrospect. But Coach LePage, and
he was great. Mark was great. He's a baseball fanatic. He's intelligent. He knows his baseball stuff. He loves the Mets for some reason, but he loves the game, and he dedicates himself to the game. There's a guy who's still around doing it, right? Which is wonderful. I remember we went to, it was the year we played at Lavelle for the finals, the tournament.
Yep.
And it was rainy and cold and stuff. But anyways, I remember what I did was I rented a car, and because it was this weekend where they had all these buses going up the 401.
Yeah, that was the referendum on whether Quebec was leaving the country.
Right. So we're going to Montreal. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So anyways, I rented a car, and my wife at the time, she was my girlfriend. She came, and Mark came. We drove through the States to go to Lavelle. I didn't take the 401. So I went through.
Oh, you're smart.
That one, right? So, and this is me being stupid. We stayed at a motel called the Belvedere Motel, and the bathtub was like a sponge. It was like a little, box. It was nothing. It was $25 for the night, and I didn't know that. Like, I go through the drive-through McDonald's there, and I'm trying to say stuff in French. I don't know French, and the lady says to me, she says, "Do you want cream in your coffee?" I said, "Oh, you speak English." I said, "Okay," but I mean, it was just that was me. But anyway, the Page was with us then, and that was the cold, rainy weekend, and it was.
Yep.
I remember that's the game Hoover. I remember Jeff. I said to him, we're on the bench, and he was struggling with his bat for a game or so. And I said, "Here, do me a favor for this one at bat. Here, I just took somebody's bats. Use this. I don't care if you hit a 5-run home run, a 10-run home run, strikeout, look like an idiot. I don't care. Just do that." And he did. And he popped up, I think. So the next at bat, I said, "Here, go back to your old bat." He hit the bomb off the center field wall. I think a couple runs scored or whatever. And it was like a thing just came out of him. Like his emotions just came up. It was so cool to see. That's what a great feeling is for me when I see a kid succeed at something like that. But I just remember that came up because I remember being in that. But Mark, he was the guy that, what kept it going. Like, he's a glue guy. Because I know he left Brock and went to Guelph to coach. And that was a pain in the neck having to drive all that. So him being backup Brock was smart and keeping the program. He's running it today. I just wish they'd play more games. I mean, when they play a 20-game schedule, that's ridiculous. There's not enough attention to baseball there, right? But I know your hands are tied and costs are different now. I get all that. But I'm glad he's still doing it. Good for him.
Yeah, he was quite, he quite gravitated to you. He absorbed a lot of what Mike had to say. And, um, I think everyone's favorite Uncle Briggs Jude.
Yeah.
I kind of like to refer to as Uncle Wayne. Just an amazing guy to have on a coaching staff, because Wayne was one of those guys that just knew all the rules in particular, which was good. But one thing I remember about you came in the summer, you gave me a copy of something called the Glendale, I think it was the Glendale baseball book. It was in a green binder, and it had all the rules of playing proper baseball. And the stuff I remember from a pitching perspective, I still remember to this day. If it's a 4-pitch walk, it's a mental error. If you walk the leadoff hitter, it's a mental error. At 2 strikes, you can only throw 2 types of pitches, which were a curveball in the dirt, or a breaking ball in the dirt, or fastball above the hands and tight. And I just remember it like, I read that thing from back to back multiple times, and never, ever, ever from that point on did I ever deviate from throwing a different type of 2-strike pitch other than a fastball high and tight or a curveball in the dirt. And, those little things got drilled into you over and over and over again. A lot of those fundamentals are things that a lot of us didn't have experience with. Even the guys that were playing, Darrell Houston played on Team Ontario. We all played in a great Oshawa program that had great coaching. I had an ex-pro pitching coach. But Ted Stone was, not a guy that went into those kinds of things. He was all about, are you going to let that guy in the batter's box beat you? Which, of course, the answer was never. But we learned a lot. And that Glendale baseball book, which I assume was from your time at Glendale, made its way through that Brock team. And I think a lot of the top end players read it back to back, just like I did. Did you? You obviously had a joy for coaching. Here's a really hard question, actually. I think it's apropos. At the end of the first year, Coach McRae leaves and is going to go off to, I think at that point, Niagara, and to take a job teaching. A lot of the players had to leave, and now we're finding out it wasn't for the reasons that everyone thinks. And some cases it was the imposition of spring ball was tough for them, or the academic probation for a couple of them. And Ted and I left to run the league in Toronto. But there comes a point where there's a void. Coach McRae is leaving.
Yeah.
At any point, did you really want to become the head coach of the team, or were you just always you had to balance, obviously, your career in insurance and eventually having a family and that kind of stuff? What was your mindset at that point when you knew that Mike was leaving and the program was sitting there and it someone needed to step up, or there was just an opportunity? Was it ever in your mind to want to take it over?
Yeah, I think what happened then, because again, Mike said, I had that talk with Mike about him wanting to do baseball full time and getting paid to do it. It makes sense,
yeah.
Right? That was his goal.
Of course.
He's not going to get that in Canada. Because there's only one major league team, really, at the time. And they're not hiring a lot of Canadians, right? So Niagara was the first stepping stone for him. And look where it took him. It took him from Niagara as a hitting guy to the head coach, to Canisius, to BCU, to the oldest school in the U.S. right now, or second oldest school, William and Mary, right? So, his career has gone where he wanted to go. So at the time, now he's gone. So I remember sitting with Dixon, Fletcher, Chris Siegel, or somebody else, and Jeff Knapp, maybe. We were sitting at Cat's Caboose, and they said to me, we want you to be the head coach. And I said, I'm not going to do all that crap. I can't organize and schedule and do it. I just don't have the time to do all that stuff. I got other priorities because I've been doing baseball a long time. Niagara for 10 years, Brock, scouting, and, doing some coach. I was coaching the district teams in the summer with Andy DeForest out of St. Catharines. So there was a lot of stuff I was doing other than Brock at the time. So And I said, you know, at Lonsbury, Jeff, he loves doing that stuff, scheduling all that crap, and he works the bridge, so he's got time to do stuff, right? If he wants to do it, let him do it, right? So, and that's basically what happened at the time. So I just it was fun. It was a nice gesture by Dixon and Ben Fletcher to say, we want you to stay on. I said, I can help for a year or two if you want. And then Jeff took over the reins and then brought in some guys that he wanted to. I think Zimmerman came in and Mike. I think Wayne Ritchie was still there and Will Page was still there, but I think Mark left after. I can't remember when. The dates, I don't remember. Left, he went to Guelph, I think. But other than that, so it got to the point, like you say, family's important. I got to do it sometime. I remember Ricciardi took over at the Jays, and he fired all the scouts, right? That's the first thing he did. He got rid of all us. We were making maybe $1,000 a summer, $500 in one month, $500 in another. So he got rid of us scouts. There's 24 of us in Ontario, and so they kept just the main guys. So I got to the point where I just said, you know what, my daughter's going to be a year old. I'm going to pay more attention to this and work and move on with my life. And I'll worry about baseball later, which I did. Because my nephew Kemp, he was good. I was doing working with those kids. Dave Davidson out of St. Catharines, he played pro ball. He's the only Canadian that's batted 1,000 and pitched in the major leagues. Anybody knows that. He did it for the Pirates.
Wow.
Out of St. Catharines. So he's 1 for 1 in hitting.
Wow, that's a stat line. Chris Ebel is also 1 for 1 in our stats somehow. That's amazing, Darrell. And tell me a little bit about life outside of baseball. You were always involved with the insurance business and helped mentor a few people into that. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it's just my brother, right? Again, he's the Wayne Gretzky of fun life type of thing. And successful, built a great career. He's retired. But he brought me along after I got released in 1986 to come and work for the industry. And so I got in the industry and I could see how it's flexible it is, right? Because you're your own boss, you make your own hours. And a guy like Mark Green, he was pitcher at the time of Brock, and he was, I just remember saying to him, "Is he interested in this type of business? Why don't you come and speak to my brother?" So he did, and he ended up getting a career out of Burlington, I guess, because he's from that area. It makes a lot of sense. But so the business allowed me to do baseball. But the problem was baseball wasn't paying anything. Right? My brother said, "Listen, you can do what you want, but you got to make some money here." So I made sure that I tried to deviate a little bit from that so I can spend more time on the job and all that. But what's funny? Working at London Life, I ended up selling some umpires insurance in the intercounty. I was playing. We had the intercounty in the Falls. Remember, I got 2 umpires insured, and so that was pretty cool. Baseball actually let me do that, but it didn't help me at the plate. But after that, it was just Then when my son came along, I got back into coaching full time in the summer times, right? And I made sure I got guys involved like Ryan Diodati, Rick Pelletieri. I love Ricky's great with kids. He's coaching at BrockvMac. I made sure I got my nephew involved, give back to teach some of these kids some baseball. And just not hearing it from me because, sometimes you just tune everybody out. It makes sense, right? But the career allowed me to do those things. So fortunately now it's different. I'm not doing baseball end of things anymore. I was up until 2019, then I took sick and it got to the point where I was exhausted all the time. I still am. Like after this, I'll probably sleep for an hour. Who knows? Right? But the baseball part of things now is just watching my kid. So, but it's funny. I'm the dad that sits there and says, "Okay, why are you doing this?" Like, this doesn't make no sense. Why is your third baseman not playing back and out in this corner in the eighth inning? Like, what? The rules changed since the year 1900? I get confused, right? And I guess I'm not that confused. It's just, he doesn't have an answer.
What's it like having a kid that's a pitcher? That is got to be something different for you. Obviously, you can. What's that?
I'd say I'm happy.
Yeah.
Listen. He's, you know what? He's a good kid. Again, I'm going to go back to my old thing, like my nephew, like a Tinish, like a Hoover. He's a Jess Dixon. He's the epitome of a student athlete. When it comes to baseball, I mean, I remember 4 or 5 years ago, he ordered a book, Stan Musial book. Who the hell orders Stan Musial that lives in Niagara Falls? That makes no sense to me, right? Why wouldn't you like Mickey Mantle or whatever? But he just loves Stan Musial. He loves Joe DiMaggio. He loves, like, he knows the old school baseball. He loves it. Nolan Ryan's his thing, right? He's another McRae. McRae was a Ryan freak. So is Jack, my kid. He loves Nolan Ryan. So he when Fab Del Rio reached out to him and he brought him in, he says, yeah, there's stuff I like, we can work with. And I'll tell you what, he got into pitch against Waterloo or Guelph. Guelph, I think it was a Waterloo, Guelph. In the playoffs last year, he got into pitch, one of the top hitters in the league, and he struck him out on 3 cut fastballs. So he's not afraid. He attacks the strike zone. He doesn't let the highs get too high and the lows get too low. He just plays the game, right? So he's learning a lot. He loves it. He loves Del Real. He loves this Jeff Strong. As their pitching guys, he's learning a lot from them. And he's sticking to the plan. He's sticking to the plan. And I said to Jack, I said, I always go back to, he had workouts with Erie Community and Niagara Community before Brock. They liked him. They wanted him to go, but he liked what Mr. Del Real had to come up with. Talking to him. So, Pilateri's always good. He loves Pilateri because he's known him all his life. So Jack is excited about Brock. And you know what? I said to him, you can play 5 years there. You can play 4. You can play 2 years and then move on from there. Let's see what happens. I don't know. You got to improve. Like, what are pitchers doing today at your age? Like, are you able to? Can you control your fastballs in the strike zone? Can you control your breaking ball? Can you control it for a strike? If you can do those things and pitch the 4 quadrants of the strike zone, you'll be fine. And as long as you keep improving, I think he's getting stronger. So he's up around, 87 right now, 86. So that's a good thing. We'll see.
It happens in university sometimes. I shot up 3 inches and 20 pounds before the 95 team, but I was bigger than when I was in playing junior in Oshawa. So there's a lot of late bloomers, especially from kids that come from bigger parents.
Right.
At the end of the day, my dad was a big guy who played, got a tryout with the Blackhawks, was a hockey player.
Right.
So, I think the world is his oyster, and, if he's got your work ethic and baseball sense, it'll be fine. I watched him pitch a game, actually. A couple years ago, I was down in Niagara Falls, and we were having fun shooting the breeze outside of the dugout. But, it was great watching your kid pitch, because he's composed and, determined and keeps calm out there. And I just, will always say to him, I'm the wrong guy to talk to about doing anything fundamentally, because I was fundamentally the reverse of all of these things. I just was a little bit of a different kind of a cat, which left-handers that's our artistic license in life. But I think he'll be a great, another great addition to people who are winning in life. And, as I catch up with all of our old teammates, a lot of them carried simple little things that you would have said to them, or just the repetition of every day. Larry Houston spoke about that right away. He was like, it was, because I'd never seen him play as well as he did at Brock, Larry in particular. Darrell had been had some very high highs. He was the MVP of Team Ontario, so he had some pretty high highs along there. But Larry really turned into an amazing player at Brock,
Right.
and he said it was just because of doing the work every day. He loved doing the work every day. Darrell, tell us a little bit about what you went through from a health perspective, because you've brought it up, but I think people would love to understand the battle that you're fighting, and you're going to win. We all know that you always have been a winner. But what challenges you've been dealing with?
You know what? Honestly, we ended up not in 2019 was the summer. We moved here to St. Catharines, my nephew's place, and it was 2 weeks before the OBAs, the provincials, and it was something. I ended up getting a blood infection, and 3 days later, I'm in the hospital for 5.5 weeks. Didn't know what was wrong. Everything was shutting down in me. So I ended up having heart attack, stroke, brain bleeds. They put me on this medication. There was no surgery required. So I take all these pills every day for since then. And they stuck a pacemaker in me. They just said, your heart's not good. You have to watch what you do. So at this stage, I walk every morning. I try to, and the cardiologist says, do 30 minutes or 35, and then do it again. So I try that. It's hard to go farther sometimes just because having to go to the bathroom, that's a pain in the ass, right? I mean, people don't realize that, so I do that. I nap a lot for some reason. I get tired easy. One day is good, and one day I sleep a lot, and one day I'm okay. So, it's just taking it easy and doing the right things. Can't drink anything, no alcohol since 2019. I got the same 15 Budweiser sitting in the fridge since 2019. So I'm waiting for the doctor to say it's okay to drink. It's funny, I said to him, I says, you give me all these freaking pills to take. Why can't you give me a pill that lets me drink? It makes no sense, right? He says,
absolutely.
He said, you can have a shot of champagne on New Year's. He says, you're an idiot. Don't just. So I don't.
You can have
I can't drink it all, so I don't do that.
Yeah.
So I just, like I say, take it day by day and see how things go.
Well, and both kids carrying on your a great tradition at Brock, and probably I can see at some point, just look. I have two girls, both played AA hockey, and one's now on scholarship playing soccer.
Nice.
And they exceed they'll exceed whatever I did on a field, because they're, you look at the size and the strength of kids now comparatively. You're right. Both my daughters are 6 feet tall, and I think when my oldest one punches me in the arm, it dislocates my shoulder. She's that strong. But, if we can provide for them some wisdom and a little sense of perspective, I think is where we strive and excel as parents. And, we're always coaching in some form or fashion. Just, it's, you'd be very proud of the fact that probably out of the 14 guys I've talked to date,
mm-hmm.
probably 9 of them have been coaching in some form or fashion.
That's good.
Todd Nye his daughter's in competitive swimming. So Todd is a principal at a school,
nice.
But he's also, involved with his daughter's swimming career, and she swims at Brock on the varsity team. And, people like Larry Houston is coaching hockey and baseball. And, I think a lot of that is because of the influence that you guys put forth into all of us. So we're really looking forward to kind of reconvening in about 5 months' time or 6 months' time, whenever that is, end of September. And, I think everyone will have kind of a fun story to talk about. You telling the guys that they could easily call time in Cooperstown when the guy was shooting them with the BB gun.
That's where Tinish was in the outfield. I said, well, what do you want to do? Catch him. No, catch the BBs in the air. That'd make you a better outfielder.
Just, there's, and I'm looking forward to obviously reconnecting with Coach McRae too, who has lived a life in those. We've all lived lives in those 30 years, but
Mike's been through a lot, yeah.
And I think it'd be just good for us to get together to do something that's going to have a lasting legacy at the school. I think having a scholarship that allows for freshman baseball players so we can retain more talent in Canada is good. Or they can use some of those funds to increase the schedule, as you were saying. I think 32 game schedule in the fall is probably a good number to shoot for if they can. I understand from the coaches that maybe some of the U.S. teams are a little more reluctant to play Brock than they were in the early days, but I knew we could handle the U.S. teams because I played in the summer with you, and we played a lot of the U.S. kids that were home on summer, that were on scholarship. And, I kind of figured if I could get them out, some of our other pitchers could get them out. And I will say this, from a pitching perspective, American pitchers are predictable comparative to Canadian ones.
Yeah.
They're all big right-handed guys that throw fastball slider combo, and the pitching that they do, and it's once you kind of have seen it a few times, you can the Canadian kids do pretty well after they've seen it. They just need the exposure and a little bit more polishing. It's interesting from that perspective. I think that's. I'll tell you a story that'll piss you off as a scout.
Okay.
Beyond all belief. Me and 3 other Canadian kids got asked to come to a camp in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Oh, okay.
And it was a combination of the Pirates and the Indians that were putting this camp on. And I remember the Indian scout because he was a big, obnoxious son of a gun that wore a huge, big gold ring. And I don't think at that time, Cleveland hasn't won a World Series in forever, so it certainly wasn't a World Series ring. But we were sitting in the dugout, and to your point earlier about the right and wrong attitude of players, there were 5 Western Michigan D1 pitchers in that dugout, and they were all smoking cigarettes and talking about, right with the scout there, drinking the night before. Mm-hmm. And having woken up 10 minutes before the scouting camp. And that scout proceeded to just center in on me at that point for whatever reason and said, Mike, I understand that you go to high school in Canada. I said, yeah, I'm Canadian. He said, I hear your education system sucks. And at that point, I turned to him and I said, well, at least we can read when we graduate. And he got so pissed. That pitchers don't run the 60, right? So I ended up having to run the 60 against a track star. And I may have been slightly faster than you, maybe not so much. And he said, Mark, get set, go. And by the time I looked up, the guy was already about 25 feet in front of me. And I don't know whether I even made it to the halfway point before he got to the 60-yard mark. But that scout had it in for me for the rest of that camp. He just hated Canadians and the rest of it. So I have not been a Cleveland Indian fan since. Yeah. And but what it did say to me was there was a complacency with some of the American kids. They were starting to get lazy about the work ethic and all of that. And I knew we were onto the right thing at Brock because I watched everybody, even kids that were going to get cut, hustle in and out of the dugout, run to their positions, and not get into it with umpires, be respectful. And that has carried so many of them so very far in life.
You know what? I remember a story. This happened when I was coaching the district team. And this just happened probably 5 years ago. We were playing up in Georgetown. And it was band, first year band. And, the 3 rules I had, and everybody had to do, I don't care who you were, you hustled to your position, you hustled off, you didn't throw your equipment, you didn't swear around the dugout because there's little kids around. That's it. you're all going to play, but if you go by those 3 rules, that's what you have to do. We're playing in Georgetown, one of these stupid times, 8:00 at night, so we're not getting home until midnight. And I remember we won the game. It was 10-2 or something like that, or I can't remember the score. Anyways, we're leaving. I'm going to my car and putting the equipment. I was the only coach there that night, and it's because I had one of the kids coach first. So I'm putting the equipment in the car, and this guy taps me on the shoulder and says, "Coach, can I talk to you for a minute?" I said, "Sure." And he says, "Listen, I've been coming to games here," and this guy's probably 75, 80 years old, 70 years old. Come to games here for 40 years. I want to congratulate you on the club. Played the game properly. You ran on the field. You ran off. You didn't disrespect the other team. You talked baseball. The kids did it in the dugout. You know what? They showed a lot of class. So right then and there, that's where my thank you is. That's what I want to make sure that gets across to the kids and to the parents, because you're playing for your city, yourself, your family, your teammates. You know what I mean? Like, those things are important. And I think you have to instill that in the kids so they understand that the baseball etiquette of things, right? That's never taught. I mean, you have to sort of, if you enjoy the game and love the game, you show that, and those kids did. So, but it's frustrating when you say just a story like that from a guy like. I remember the scout with me was Jack Deutsch from the Angels, and there was a scout for the Jays, Bob Myers, who said to me, "I will get you to spring training, but you better be in shape." He was from Buffalo. And I told that to the guy in L.A. because he never gave me the contract. He kept saying, "I'll put you off." And he put me off, because you couldn't get drafted back because you're a Canadian, right? So I remember he put me off, and I said to Jack, "This is what the guy from the Jays said." He said, "You know what? Tell him to go to hell. Like, he should want you to play for that team. You shouldn't have to say you got to be in shape. That's stupid." So Jack says, "Here you go." Got me in. I was still in shape. In shape. So,
yeah. I will say this, Darrell. I think, and I said this earlier, you can just tell when you've played long enough and you played with enough good players. When you're on a field, you can tell people who know the way around and who do it the right way. And not a lot of our players get to see you swing a bat, but I did. Because I made the mistake. It wasn't a mistake. I was like that. I threw live batting practice to you in Niagara Falls.
right.
And I've told everybody this, that in Canada, I didn't have, even with the aluminum bats, I didn't have a lot of people who could handle my first. Once they kind of saw me, then they would start to barrel it up a bit more. But my ball moved a lot, probably about 4 inches, 5 inches on a fastball run. So I remember thinking, I'm going to get Coach Kemp out. This is just an obsession with me. I'm not going to let Darrell beat me here. This is my first real interaction with him, and I'm going to get him out, damn it. So I threw a good fastball to you, and you swung over it, and you said to me, "That's a great changeup, kid." So then I threw it again, and you laced it into right field. And, you just had such a quiet, composed swing, and the results were devastating. And I saw that same discipline eventually in the Jeff Hoovers and the Larrys and the Andrew Tinishes and Colin Tylers of the world, that they were emulating the best parts of that calmness and that ability to, win that battle with the pitcher. So I think, your coaching style and your style in life is very understated, despite having the big career and, those kinds of things. The stuff I remember the best is just the more subtle things that you did with people. Your touch with people has been great. And I think you're going to find that a lot of people remember small little conversations that they would have had with you, like Rob Green did about you just randomly saying to him, "What are you doing after graduation?" That helped springboard them on to great things in life. And we never really all got the chance to say thank you for that, because the end of the season kind of ended in a weird way. But there's a lot of people who are going to want to shake your hand and say thank you when we see you in September.
No, hey, don't ever. That's fine. I can help Rob. People just want to help everybody. That's it. Not a big deal. Yeah, if you use it's easy to hit a ball, right? Need tough.
Well, I kind of wish it was the era of the wooden bat. We had to pitch against aluminum bats for most of my career. And then at the end, I played in a few wooden bat leagues. And I love that, because when a ball moves like mine does, I broke up, I think, 6 or 8 bats in a game once, and I loved it. Yeah. But, you know how many check swing bloop singles you give up when you're using aluminum bats? It's unbelievable. And that's, we could have a whole other podcast on just the difference between using a wood bat and an aluminum bat. But, we look forward to seeing you, Coach Kemp. And,
thank you.
Looking forward to meeting Jack in his colors. Yeah. And seeing your whole family. I think it's, keep up the great fight with health, and hopefully it gets better every day. And maybe, we can get you a shot glass of beer when we see you next.
Yeah. I appreciate you for everything.
Thanks, Darrell. You have a great day, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much, Mike.